So before we get to your phone calls, the whole Ohtani story fascinates me. So at 4 o'clock today, Ippy Iwamura is going to appear before a federal judge. And I guess they will formally charge him. I guess from what we're reading, he stole $16 million from Ohtani. So because I was curious, I made a phone call to a pretty prominent banker. I'll leave it at that. And he told me that within the banking industry, people are scratching their head about how this could have happened. It just doesn't make sense to anybody. Like he said, any transaction over $5,000 has to be vetted. They have to call you. They ask you security questions and things like that. And it's to the point that they're wealthy clients that have to spend $1 million on this or $100,000 on that. They get annoyed that there are so many hoops to jump through in order to okay the transaction. Because if you transact something that's not legal, that's not exactly vetted by the person who's quote-unquote paying, then the bank is responsible. So, did Iwamura completely did he overtake Shohei's life? Did he have all the security questions? Did he do everything that, again, either the bank or Shohei's financial people, they should all be fired. There's $16 million being moved out of your account, and it never gets to Shohei Ohtani. It's inconceivable to people in the banking business that this could have happened. So how did it happen?
I think the best case scenario for Ohtani is that he didn't bet, but he funded his friend's addiction. Because there's just no way that you could take that kind of money without him knowing. Is he that much of a rube?
I guess he's a rube. Isn't that the worst thing? You're either guilty or a complete rube.
But even that doesn't make any sense because was he in charge of his entire life? He had no accountants. He had no one else in his life except Epi. That's it.
It seems like that, Don.
Because
it seems like that.
Because I've got Nancy, I've got an accountant. If anybody was siphoning money from me, there would be a few red flags. There'd be some people that would notice, even if I'm oblivious, which I am, because I trust people, trust my wife, and he must have trusted Epi. But there still should have been, when you're talking about that kind of money, Peter, there has to be other layers that would notice.
That's what I'm saying.
Boy, there's quite a bit of money out of here. So for him, and maybe that was the arrangement. Listen, I'm going to fund this for you. All right, I'm going to take care of you so you don't get your legs broken or worse. But I'm telling you, if this ever comes to roost, man, you're taking the fall. Was that the agreement?
Must really have an unbelievable relationship with somebody to fund them to the tune of $16 million.
I don't know how close people can get under different circumstances, but if they were as close as you suggested, Michael, where he'd warm them up before games.
Don, they didn't, but they practically lived with each other. So they were with each other 20 hours. He didn't notice the guy making 19,000 bets?
So he could not. Oh, no, of course he did. So the question is, did he fund it? Was he responsible for making these bets? He probably knew that his buddy had a problem. And he knew that if he didn't pay off the gamblers, he'd be in trouble. If anybody found out, he'd be in trouble. He didn't want to lose him, Michael. He didn't want him out of his life. So he probably funded it the way you would fund if your wife had a problem. I don't want to lose you, so I'm going to take care of you. But just know that if this comes out, I'm not involved. You stole from me.
Yeah, but then he's not a rube. To have engineered this, and listen, if this comes out, you're going to jail. He's not a rube.
No, he's not. No, if I'm suggesting he funded his friend's gambling habit, then he's not a rube, and he wasn't stolen from. He was just trying to protect his buddy. And he got so much in debt, he realized if I don't pay this guy off, these gamblers are going to break his legs or worse, or this is going to get out and he's going to lose his job with the Dodgers and I'm going to lose my best buddy. So I'm going to fund this so we can keep it all fine. But just so you know, a couple of things. I'll fund your betting. I will pay your debts. Just two things. One, don't bet on baseball. And two, if you get caught, you're taking a fall. Because I am not going to admit I funded this. I'm going to say that you stole from me.
Now, can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah.
the losses, the obscene amount of losses, $40 million
in
over
losses.
Over what period did that happen?
2 years.
Like
2 or 3 years.
But so how does that keep going? That's what I'm trying. How does that keep going? I don't get it.
What do you mean? How does it keep? He was an addict.
Like, okay, when he's down $5 million, there's no communication. If on some level Shohei's involved in this, he doesn't know anything about what's happening. It's just like none of it makes sense.
None of it makes sense. That's the thing that makes sense, is that none of it makes sense. I mean, you really can't make any kind of normal conclusions out of this. The guy's either complete dunce or naive to a point, like, you know, almost like a savant, or he's complicit in it. So I guess you choose, you know, either a dunce or naive. But $16 million, again, if he is totally in the dark about this, then everything falls on his people, his accountants, his bankers. They should all be fired.
Does he have these people?
He's got an agent. Shouldn't they be taking care of stuff like this? Hey, $16 million. And Peter, $40 million losses. But there was like $110 million in wins. $110 million in wins. And $150 million in losses. So it comes out. So, I mean, look at the money changing hands. And the weird part is, where's the $40 million? Where's the $110 million that he made? Because he did not deposit that back into Ohtani's account. He put it somewhere else. So does he have $110 million somewhere?
It's insane.
The whole thing really stinks.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. So again, a banker who does this for a living told me we don't understand how this happened. I mean, did he have a ma and pa shop? Some small bank? No, some small bank doesn't handle $16 million. And you can't imagine a big bank being this inept. Oh my, what was that?
That was hit the wrong key on my computer, and a little big pun started playing. You know, I hit the play button on my keyboard.
Let's go to Kyle in Memphis. Kyle.
Hey, how you guys doing? First time caller.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. So I wanted to talk about the Ohtani thing, and the original article with from Tisha Thompson, right?
Yep.
She said that his representatives knew about the article and that it was going to come out, and they found out in the beginning of the year. But they still allowed Ippei to be his interpreter? Why wouldn't they find someone else to interpret to Ohtani if they thought this guy was stealing so much money from him? That's just like,
Kyle, it's a great point. That's what's so frustrating about this. I don't know if you feel it. None of it makes perfect sense. The pieces don't fit together in the puzzle. They're the ones who made him available to Tisha Thompson. They're the ones who told him to tell the story. Then he told the story that, you know, Ohtani paid the debt for him, and then they find out later and they go, well, maybe we shouldn't have said. I mean, the people around Ohtani have to be held accountable, Kyle. They are. If Ohtani is totally innocent and not complicit in this at all, he's got to fire everybody around him. Everybody. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, 100%. I just don't understand why not find someone else to interpret to him if you think this guy is actually stealing $4 million from him. You think he's going to tell the truth to Ohtani? I mean, there's plenty of people that they could have found to interpret to this guy and tell him the actual truth.
Well, that does speak to this, though, Kyle, and we mentioned this earlier. It's unbelievable how close these guys were.
Yeah.
And if Don's scenario is accurate, they were that close that Ohtani was still willing to, like, absorb the cost of this guy's gambling addiction. I'm not saying that that's the case. That's Don's scenario that he's painting, that it could be. It was like they were connected at the hip. You never saw one without the other, except when Ohtani was in the batter's box or on the mound. And then when somebody came out to talk to Ohtani on the mound, there was Ippei as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it was a really different kind of relationship that you don't see that often. You just don't. Very odd. Very odd. Let's go to Dan in Pasadena. Danny?
Hey, Dan.
Hey, guys. Thank you for taking my call. Really hope you're joking about the show breaking up.
No, it's not breaking up.
Michael,
it just feels that way.
Okay, good. Because, Michael, as you may know, a lot of people out here in L.A., they kind of hate you right now. But I'm not one of those people. Just want to make that clear before I get to my point. I love the show, listen every day. usually, I can stomach Don's Dodger hate. I know he hasn't gotten over 88. I know Nancy's a Giants fan, but, I just have to ask regarding the Shohei story. Have you actually read the federal complaint yet?
I've read a lot of it. I haven't read all of it, to be honest.
Okay, no, that's understandable. I mean, it's a long thing because I feel like, I totally get your point about him, not speaking to the media as a fan. I'd love him to speak to the media more. Seems like he only answers questions about once or twice a week. But I feel like your questions yesterday about, like when Don was saying the whole thing stinks and you kind of suggested that, the translator might be the fall guy. I think a lot of those questions would be answered just by kind of reading the complaint. I think,
how so?
If you go through the evidence. Well, I think it pretty much exonerates Shohei. They have a lot of evidence. Unless you think, do you think the DOJ, Homeland Security, and the IRS are conspiring to protect him, or what is kind of your position when you say the whole thing stinks?
Well, Don, you go.
Well, because the complaint is, I guess, did he steal the money from Ohtani? So clearly the evidence shows that he took it, but what doesn't connect is how do you not know that money's gone? How can you possibly have all that money stolen from you and you have zero idea?
Yeah, Dan, does that make sense to you? No matter what.
Come on, that's the point. Maybe none of it can be proved. Maybe none of it can actually tangibly be proved. But all we ask ourselves is, does it make sense that somebody who is your best friend, you practically live together, it's almost like you're in a married relationship, and he's made 119 or 19,000 bets in 2 years. He has stolen millions of dollars from you, and you have zero idea? That doesn't.
Well, I think that's. Yeah, it's a fair skepticism, but I think, you see athletes, not all the time, but there are other examples of athletes that have had even larger sums of money stolen from them.
That's a good point.
I think,
but not by their best
close friend.
Well, I think that he totook advantage of it. I mean, when they first met, I think Shohei was only, he might have not even been 20 years old yet. I think he took advantage of him. I think.
So is it fair to call him a rube?
I mean, he's a. Can you define rube?
Well, just an ignoramus, completely oblivious of everything around him.
Well, maybe.
Not maybe. But give me. I'm not even a Dodger hater. My dad grew up a Dodger fan. It comes down. No, but it comes down to it's one or the other. Either he's completely ignorant or he's in on it. There's no in between. You can't have that much money stolen from you under your nose and say that he's not a complete ignoramus or that he was in on it. There is no third answer. There's only two.
Well, Don, the allegation is that he impersonated Ohtani to the bank and even changed the settings on the account so Ohtani wouldn't even know.
Here's what Dan, here's what I want to ask you, because you started with this and you sound like a very reasonable guy. So people in LA hate me. What have I said that's wrong? I have said none of it smells right, but I'm willing to say that he's innocent. The one thing that I've harped on is that this guy has refused to take questions. It's unacceptable. They hate me because of that. People in L.A. hated Ohtani when he was at the Angels. Now all of a sudden he's God?
I don't know about that.
But would they have bowed down to him like they do now, and they're protecting him against a big-headed freak in New York who says he should answer questions? Isn't that a little odd?
Well, I don't think that they're necessary. I think that when you said he has a God complex, and I know you were saying but you were saying if he bet on baseball, he should be banned. I think maybe you right. I get that. I think maybe you were taking a little bit out of context, and I do think, I think just this idea, especially yesterday when it seemed like you almost doubled down in some ways, and
I do double down that he should be answering questions to the media. And Dan, forget about the money. Forget about it. What pitch did you hit for a home run? He doesn't even do that. Who is he? Why is he not allowed to do that? Aaron Judge has to do it.
Well, he does. He doesn't talk every day, but he does talk at least once a week.
Aaron Judge talks every day. Why does he talk once a week? Why? Why is he going to wait once a week?
Well, you'd have to ask him. I'm not with his people. So, like I said, I would love to hear him talk more. I mean, I watch the post game every night, hoping he'll talk.
I just find it inconceivable, Dan, that I know you're being somewhat facetious, but people hate me because I'm saying he should talk like every other big star in sports.
Well, I think the bigger issue that people are taking is when you guys were saying that the whole thing stinks, and you're kind of suggesting that he somehow either covered the debts knowingly, even though that there's this entire investigation by the DOJ and Homeland Security that basically found. I mean, they reviewed 9,700 pages of text between him and the interpreter, and there's not a single message.
Dan, I've said it over and over again. I love watching the guy play. I hope he's completely innocent, and all that we have said, that even if he's completely innocent, and Dan, if you're being honest with yourself, none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense that somebody could steal $16 million from Jeff Bezos, who has $100 billion. And I think he noticed $16 million missing. That's the only thing that doesn't make sense to me. Is he that clueless?
Again, I mean, they say he I mean, he has a lot more money than $16 million, and it's alleged that the translator impersonated him to bank officials and changed the settings, so Shohei wouldn't even know that the money that these transactions were happening.
And what I've been saying over and over again is, if this is all true, Shohei has to fire the bankers, get the money back from the bank, has to fire all of his people.
He needs a better team.
His team is awful. His team of the Oakland A's.
It wasn't like $16 million was gone at once. It happened over a long period of time.
You're making it seem like, well, he just impersonated Ohtani. Do you need information to be able to do all the things, to change passcodes, to be able to wire money? That information was given to him by Ohtani.
Right, because he was, exactly.
That's what I said, and it's got to be a rube.
Shohei's information.
But you allowed him in.
He got taken advantage of in a new country. He's not from here. You say he gave that speech in English. I think there's a big difference between giving a speech and fluently understanding the language. I mean, I think he was taken advantage of in a new country.
Listen,
obviously that's true.
You can certainly make the case that we are biased against Ohtani with our opinion. You at least have to admit that you are going over the top the other way. You at least have to admit that.
I mean, I'll admit I'm biased.
Well, he's saying, but Don, he's saying that the report says that.
To say that it doesn't stink, to just believe everything as is, I think is a little naive.
But if the DOJ says that he's completely innocent, why shouldn't we believe it? The DOJ has no doubt.
But like I said before, there's difference but what you can prove and what you can believe. I mean, if Ohtani if they were careful with it, I mean, they could show the guy is accusing him of stealing, and then you could show the evidence is that, he stole. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything seems to be up and up. You've had bankers tell you, Michael, that it would be very difficult to do this. How could it possibly happen? How could all this money go away without anybody noticing it whatsoever? Now, maybe they can't nail it down and prove it, because remember, in order to get a conviction, you got to be 100% sold that it happened. And if they're 50%, they're like, it might not be worth it. You at least have to admit the thing stinks to high heaven, and if you don't admit that, then you obviously are biased in favor of Ohtani.
Don, I will admit that when this story first broke, I was very skeptical. But when the Department of Justice comes out with a 40-page complaint that fully details what happens, I choose to believe them. And they say that he's a victim. And I don't know why the DOJ and Homeland Security and the IRS would be covering for someone who's not even
covering. It's do they have evidence that Ohtani was in on it? And if they don't...
No, they have evidence exonerating him. They have the exact opposite. And I don't know why.
Well, then I'm willing to say that he's a rube and he's totally innocent, and he should talk about what pitch he hit for a home run. That's all I'm saying. So I'll be out in LA this year for the Yankees-Angels series. Anybody who wants to talk with me, I'll be there. Whatever, Dan.
And Mike, and when you come out to Dodger Stadium next year, I would love to. Come. You're my favorite American League broadcaster. Like I said, I love the show.
Dan, this was a good conversation. You weren't rude. You laid out your points. I thought you laid out your points great. I'm glad that we could have this discussion. I don't want people in L.A. to hate me. I don't.
No.
I mean, my two co-hosts hate me. Why do I need people in L.A. to hate me?
Again, just doesn't make sense.
It's unbelievable how sensitive people are. Like, look at this guy, Sean. I'm not a Dodger fan, but wow, the whole Michael K. Ohtani stuff is crazy. Guy doing backflips, hoping Ohtani is a criminal mastermind who could cover his tracks, but not smart enough to cover his translator's tracks, as if athlete celebrities haven't been ripped off before. I want Ohtani to be guilty? Why? Why would I want that?
That's the last thing you want, Michael. You know how important he is to baseball, and as a baseball fan, you should be rooting for everything to be okay. We're just honestly thinking this thing just doesn't make a lot of sense to us.
Well, New York Post has a pretty big story you guys should probably be paying attention to.
What is it?
The headline is, women's butt sizes around the world revealed. Which countries have the biggest and smallest?
Well, when we get back, you can tell us. I talk for a living. And according to Sam Blum, Ipe appeared in court today with shackles around his ankles. This is big-time stuff, people.
Yeah.
He's released on a $25,000 bond with conditions that include he cannot leave the Central District of California without permission, cannot contact Ohtani, and go to a mandatory gambler's addiction program. Talk about a guy who threw away a dream job.
Again, though, we still don't know so much. This story still doesn't make sense.
Well, Carl thinks it does now.
Well, he read it and he knows it all. But I maybe it'll be clear if I read the entire thing. But I still think this is wide open to what could have really happened.
Again, this is a legitimate question. I don't know the answer. Dan kept saying about he was fully exonerated by Homeland Security. Does that mean that fully exonerated, or we don't have enough here to believe that he's lying? The allegation is that Epi stole from him, right? That's the allegation.
Yeah, it looks like they have a lot of proof.
And they have a lot of proof that he stole from him. But does that mean Ohtani's fully exonerated, or that, hey, we've got enough here that he did steal from you and we're going to prosecute him? You're right. So I don't know how.
I think they have enough.
Yeah, so they have enough. But did they have enough to think that he was involved? Because maybe Ohtani was smart enough to not leave a paper trail by looking at the text messages.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but the Department of Justice is supposedly pretty smart. They have no dog in the fight to protect Ohtani. Baseball does.
It's not.
But the Department of Justice doesn't.
But what are they reviewing? They're again. Correct me if I'm wrong. From what my understanding is,
but from what I understanding is that Ohtani has given his phone too. So all communication between the two of them over the last 3 years has been reviewed.
Right. So, but their objective was to see if there's enough to go on that Ohtani was robbed.
Right.
So are they investigating whether Ohtani was in on it? Or are they just
but if he was in on it, he wasn't robbed.
Right.
So they obviously think that he wasn't in on it.
So, just because there wasn't any text messages or emails, it's probably... I never believed he bet on baseball, Michael. I never believed that he bet on anything. But...
You just think that he might be protecting his guy?
I think he's protecting his friend. The same thing happened with Anderson with Barry Bonds, right? He actually went to jail for his buddy. It feels like this because how do you explain what I'd like to ask Dan if he was still on? Then how do you explain Ohtani's people letting him go, and then the first thing he says is that it was lent to me? How do you explain that? Or I guess he lied, but you're the one who sent him out there thinking he was going to say one thing and he said another. So all we're saying is not one person has ever accused Ohtani of anything. The thing just stinks and it doesn't make a lot of sense. We're not the only people who feel that way. Now, what's the extent of the involvement? I don't know. And if you're a baseball fan, you should be rooting for Ohtani to be fully exonerated because we want to watch this guy play. And the last thing baseball wants is a controversy. But when I asked Dan and he wouldn't give it, you got to at least admit the guy's a rube.
You know what's amazing to me is that, LA fans, Dodger fans don't show up at the ballpark till the third inning. They have enough energy to hate us for questioning this. It's unbelievable. The guy's been a Dodger for 6 weeks. It's unbelievable that he should speak every day like Aaron Judge and Francisco Lindor and Mike Trout do.
But
I'm a bad guy for thinking that.
But fans don't care about that, Michael.
But why would you rip someone? It's such an obvious point. I wish we had Manfred on the air. Why is he in every player contract? It says that you have to engage with the media. It's part of the rules of engagement.
Baseball is in a very precarious situation. They desperately need this guy. They need him.
But it's still odd they'd be so obvious with different rules for him. Like, you can be that blatant, though?
Listen,
he just doesn't talk?
Listen to our Trey Wingo. He's a man in love. So, Justin Ray writes, Tiger Woods will make his 24th consecutive cut at the Masters. And then Trey... He already made it. Trey goes, on one leg, basically held together with chicken wire and gum. Remarkable.
Hey, listen, that's his cross to bear.
No, it's not totally untrue.
But, he loves him some Tiger.
Yeah.
So do I.
But not to that. But even
not
Peter,
to that.
It does get a little awkward, like some of these people. And I get it.
I wouldn't have tweeted that.
When you grow up with a team, and it's odd. That's why I never really got into individual sports, because I just can never give my heart to just one guy, one person, like a team, the history of the team. And I had favorite players. I love Lawrence Taylor. I love Nolan Ryan. I love Doc Gooden. There was a lot of players I loved. But to be fully invested in the success and failure of an individual, not attached to a team. It's odd to me. Obviously, there's a lot of people that do it, but to be sick and in love with your favorite team, like you with the Commanders or me with the Giants or the Mets, but for an individual,